Many years ago, I saw a picture of The Who, and Keith Moon was wearing a badge. Keith Moon, the drummer in The Who, he was wearing a badge that said Elvis for Everyone. And it was around about the time that the Elvis for Everyone album came out. And I always wondered, was he being ironic when he was wearing that, or did he actually genuinely like Elvis? And I like to think that he did like Elvis, and that he wasn't wearing it just to sort of make fun of Elvis. So recently, when I saw one of those badges for sale on online for not very much money at all, I decided to get one. What do you think of this album, Elvis for Everyone from 1965? It's not an album that people really talk about very much. So what I'd like to do today is, well, talk about this album, and in particular compare it with this album from 1961 with the similar title, Something for Everybody. So both titles suggest that there's a variety of music in there, that Elvis has a broad appeal, and that whoever listens to these records will find something that they can enjoy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pit one song from the album against a song from the other album. And the way I've done that is I've chosen songs that are more or less similar to each other. So rather than going track A1 versus track A1, I've chosen two tracks that are quite similar in some ways. So the first song on Elvis for Everyone is Your Cheating Heart. So what I'd like to do is pit that song against I Want You With Me from Something for Everybody. So Your Cheating Heart sounds to me a little bit like sort of a rowdy cousin of A Fool Such as I. Both of them are classic country songs with a rock and roll arrangement. But Your Cheating Heart is much rougher, much more rough and ready than A Fool Such as I. On the other album, I Want You With Me, it kind of starts out in quite a sinister sort of way. And I like the ending with the drum roll at the end. I think I Want You With Me would have made a really good ending song to the album. But there are a couple of problems with the song for me. Firstly, the vocal melody. Of course, Elvis performs it very well, but the actual melody, I think, is a little bit formulaic. When I was little, my mama said to me, someday you'll find a love, son, to last eternally. I want you with me. So it sounds like the kind of melody that he would have sang in the 1950s. So it might have been a good song or a better song had he recorded it a few years earlier before he went into the army. And the solo too, it starts out, the instrumental break starts out very well with the piano going up and down the scale, and then the guitar and drums crashing in. But then it sort of plods its way along with just the piano comping away. It might have been better with a guitar solo there rather than the piano. It doesn't feel like a piano solo. So I would give this one to Your Cheating Heart. I've always liked that song. Was never quite sure why it remained unreleased in the 50s. So I'm definitely going to give that one to Elvis for Everyone. The next song on side one of Elvis for Everyone is Summer Kisses, Winter Tears. And I'm going to compare that or contrast that with Judy. So these are musically quite different, although both songs are about the end of relationships, and they both kind of have a sort of an undulating, smooth, lilting vocal melody line. They're both really well sung. It's a difficult choice for me, this one. I think I slightly prefer the version of Summer Kisses, Winter Tears on the Collector's Gold album, where he just changes the phrasing slightly. But still, this is a great song. And nothing can light the dark of the night like a falling star, summer kisses. And Judy, I've always liked this song too. It's always been one of my favourite songs on that second side of Something for Everybody. But on balance, I probably just give this one to Summer Kisses, Winter Tears. The third song on Elvis for Everyone is Finders Keepers, Losers Weepers, and I'm going to contrast that, or put that one up against In Your Arms. In fact, Finders Keepers is more similar to Judy in a way. They have similar sort of tempos. And in fact, really, Finders Keepers is closest to Return to Sender. It's kind of like a poor man's Return to Sender. So we're comparing it here, though, with In Your Arms, and both songs have notable saxophone presence, although In Your Arms has a saxophone solo, whereas Finders Keepers doesn't. I think Finders Keepers is actually the weakest song on the Elvis for Everyone album. So this is definitely one for the Something for Everybody album. Although In Your Arms is not necessarily the strongest song on side 2 of that album. I think it sounds like they're having fun with the backing vocals. Everybody plays and sings on it very well. Just not one of the best songs on the album, but still, I think it's a better song than Finders Keepers. So moving on to the next track on Elvis for Everyone, it's In My Way. This is a really simple structured song, just with acoustic guitar and vocal, and I'm going to put that one up against Starting Today, which is also a fairly simple song, but it does have a more complicated arrangement with the backing vocals and the piano. Now, I've always really liked In My Way, especially I like the lyrics. So lie to me a little, say you love me a lot, and I'll be true to you in my way. What a deep lyric. I love that lyric so much. However, on the other side, Starting Today is pretty much perfection as far as I'm concerned. I just love the piano in that song. I like the positive message in the lyrics about, starting over. He's been through a bad experience, but he's putting it all behind him. Starting today, not even tomorrow, but starting today. Great backing vocals, and of course perfect vocal from Elvis himself. So much as I love In My Way, I've got to give this one to Starting Today. So the next song on Elvis for Everyone is Tomorrow Night, and I'm going to pit that one against Give Me the Right. So Tomorrow Night is a bluesy kind of song, and Give Me the Right also has that similar heavy triplet feel to it. So, as you probably know, the backing on Tomorrow Night was recorded in 1965 over the top of Elvis's vocal from about 10 years earlier at Sun Records. And I heard this version before I heard the original version on, I think it was A Legendary Performer, Volume 4. So I've always liked this version. I like the backing vocals, and the guitar and the drums, and especially I like the harmonica solo in the middle. And I think that the new backing really complements Elvis's vocal. But Give Me the Right is one of my favourites on Something for Everybody. I know there was more soprano vocal on the earlier takes, and that wasn't working for me. I'm not too keen on the version with more soprano, and I think they made the right decision by getting rid of the soprano or not using it so much. I love the guitar playing in this one, really good guitar from presumably Scotty Moore, and great vocals. And what else is in there? The saxophone is in there too. Yeah, that sounds really good too. So I'm going to give this round to Give Me the Right. I just prefer that one over Tomorrow Night. And the last track on side 1 of Elvis for Everyone is Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm going to pit that one against I'm Coming Home, the first song on side 2 of Something for Everybody. I suppose really they only have the tempo. They're both quite fast-paced songs, not much else in common. So Memphis, Tennessee, love the drums on that, very heavy-sounding drums. It's really well played, classic rock and roll riff in there, and a great vocal. And Elvis sounds so anguished at the end where he sings,
Marie is only 6 years old, information please, try to put me through to her in Memphis, Tennessee.
Great singing on that line. Well, all the way through, but that line in particular. So I'm Coming Home, this is notable for its double solo section with the piano followed by the guitar solo. It could almost be A Big Hunk of Love light. I really like this song. Again, you just can't really fault it. It's just well played and well sung by everybody. But I'm going to go with Memphis, Tennessee for this one. So at the halfway stage, Elvis for Everyone is putting up a good fight here. I make it 3-3 at the moment after 6 songs. So let's move on to side 2. The first song on side 2 of Elvis for Everyone is For the Millionth and the Last Time. And I'm going to compare and contrast that one, put this one up against, I put the blame on me from side 2 of Something for Everybody. For the Millionth and the Last Time is not like any other song on either of these albums with that sort of cha-cha-cha rhythm that it's got going on. I think this song would have worked very well on the Potluck album. And conversely, I think that the song Stepping Out of Line would have worked better on this album, Elvis for Everyone. But I really like this song. It reminds me, it takes me back to when I was a young teenager. In fact, probably about the time when I was buying this album. And it reminds me of a time when I was seeing, a girl from my neighborhood. And some days we couldn't see each other, so we'd call each other on the phone, And it was really difficult to put the phone down. So I'd say, okay, well, see you tomorrow then. And she'd say, yeah, see ya. Okay, see you tomorrow then. See ya. All right, I'm going to put the phone down now. Okay, see you tomorrow. Yeah, bye then. Bye, bye. I'm putting the phone down now. You too. You putting the phone down? Okay, good night. That sort of thing, It reminds me of that. Put the Blame on Me is quite unusual in the with the presence of the organ. It's a song that I used to like more when I was younger. I still enjoy it, but to me it starts to flag towards the end of the song. It's not one of the highlights of side 2 of Something for Everybody, although it's not bad at all. But I would actually choose For the Millionth and the Last Time over Put the Blame on Me. So the next song on Elvis for Everyone is Forget Me Never. So this is another simple arrangement, very similar to In My Way. And I think what I'll do is I'll compare that with, and contrast that with Gently on side 1 of Something for Everybody. So Forget Me Never, I don't like that quite as much as In My Way. It doesn't have the powerful lyrics that In My Way does. It's as well sung, but yeah, I think it's just not as powerful lyrically. And for some reason, it reminds me of, what's the name of that song? Laurel and Hardy performed it in one of their films, On the Trail of the Lonesome Pine. Is that the name of the song? But anyway, yeah, for some reason it reminds me of that song. While Gently is, it's slightly more complicated. The arrangement with again, it's a guitar arrangement, but there are backing vocals too. The guitar is very delicately played, very nicely played guitar. And in fact, the writer of the writer of the sleeve notes to the original copy of the Japanese version of Something for Everybody, he wrote that this song is the best one on the album, Something for Everybody. So yeah, I have to say that Gently is a more enjoyable song than Forget Me Never. So the next one on Elvis for Everyone is Sound Advice. Now this is the point of the album where it starts getting very acoustic-y in the middle of side 2. So I'm going to put that one up against I Slipped, I Stumbled, I Fell, which is also a kind of a poppy type song. So Sound Advice, I never really thought much about this song until I watched the movie Follow That Dream last year. And I really enjoyed listening to this song or watching Elvis perform this song, in its original context in the movie. And so since watching the movie, I've actually learned to enjoy, I've grown to enjoy the song much more. It sounds like a song that would be quite a lot of fun to play and sing at the same time. It's quite a simple song. And I Slipped, I Stumbled, I Fell. So this is the movie song that ends the Something for Everybody album. This is another sort of happy, jolly song, but I think it's well sung and well played as well. I probably just slightly choose this one over Sound Advice, but they're both pretty good. So we'll go with I Slipped, I Stumbled, I Fell on that one. Next one is Santa Lucia from side 2 of Elvis for Everyone, and this is another song with just guitar and vocal, although it sounds like it's classical guitar on this occasion. And I'm going to pit that one against It's a Sin from side 1 of Something for Everybody. Now, I read that RCA recorded some instrumental music for Santa Lucia that they were planning to put on in order to lengthen the song. But I don't know where I can find that version. If anybody knows where to find that, please let me know. I'd like to hear it. So it's well sung, but I don't think it's as successful as his earlier Italian-inspired songs like Surrender and It's Now or Never. Perhaps it's because it's sung in Italian, I don't know. But then again, I enjoy Guadalajara sung in Spanish. So I'm not quite sure, but I do enjoy it. However, how does it fare against It's a Sin? So It's a Sin, I think, is the weakest song on side one of Something for Everybody. And I'll tell you why. It's because of the arrangement. I really like Elvis's singing on it, but I think the arrangement is too. What's the phrase I'm looking for? It's neither here nor there. So I think the Jordanaires have too much of a presence on that song. I love the Jordanaires 9 times out of 10, but this is one of those occasions where I think they're too dominant on this. They're too prominent on the song. That's the word I'm looking for. And also the that sort of plinky, plinky, plinky piano that keeps being played over and over again. That doesn't do much for me either. So yeah, I just think the arrangement is not right on that song. They should have done a completely different arrangement to the one they chose. But having said that, I probably think it just edges this particular round, as it were. So I would choose It's a Sin over Santa Lucia, but only just. So the next one, we've just got 2 more to go now. So the next one is I Met Her Today from Elvis for Everyone, and this could only be pitted against the mighty There's Always Me, side 1, track 1 of Something for Everybody. These were both written by Don Robertson, and they're both very challenging songs. And I understand that Elvis wasn't pleased with his vocal on I Met Her Today, and perhaps that's why it wasn't released until 1965. So There's Always Me, another amazing song, brilliantly sung and played by everybody. You know, what a way to start an album called Something for Everybody. I think anyone could appreciate that song, even if they don't particularly like it. It's one of those songs that's well known in England, even though it wasn't a hit in England. For instance, British Telecom actually did an advert not so long ago in which they used this song. And I think the actors in the advertisement were all impersonating Elvis singing this song. So it's a well-known song in the UK, even though it wasn't a hit there. But I Met Her Today is also a mighty, mighty song. I love the middle 8 in that song.
How I treasured each smile, each kiss you gave to me now and then.
But I can't think of any reason why not to choose There's Always Me. I have to go with There's Always Me, but only just. It's really sort of a 10 out of 10 versus a 10 out of 10. You know, perhaps There's Always Me goes up to 11, I don't know. And the last one, When It Rains It Really Pours from Elvis for Everyone against Sentimental Me from Something for Everybody. When It Rains It Really Pours, an out-and-out blues song. Sentimental Me is bluesy, like Give Me the Right, kind of a heavy, slow triplet rhythm going on there, like there is with Give Me the Right. So it's got a definite bluesy feel to it. I've always really liked When It Rains It Really Pours. Scotty Moore's guitar, I love that it's sort of quite syncopated, not especially melodic, but quite sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Restless, that's the word I think I'm looking for. And I like the piano playing a lot, kind of reminiscent of the piano playing on Blueberry Hill. And a great vocal. And it's funny because in 1965, that was the time when the British invasion bands were really at their peak. Not only the Beatles and the Stones, but you had bands like the Kinks and the Hollies, and they were all still doing, you know, old American blues songs on their albums. But if you listen to like the Kinks doing Milk Cow Blues Boogie, or the Hollies doing Lordy Miss Claudie, there's just no comparison with those guys' blues versions against something like this, When It Rains It Really Pours. But yet an album like Elvis for Everyone was just ignored by the time. So if we compare that to, as I say, Sentimental Me, this is one of those songs that it used to be one of my favourites on this album, perhaps my very, very favourite when I first heard it. And I still really like it. It's very much a vocal-dominated song. I think it might be enjoyable to hear this without any instrumentation. Yeah, as opposed to It's a Sin, where the Jordanaires are a little bit too prominent. I think they're just perfect on this song, as is Elvis. You just really can't fault Elvis's vocals on any of these songs on both albums. But I'm going to give this one to When It Rains, It Really Pours. And so after 12 rounds, the judge, yours truly, scores it 7 to Something for Everybody and 5 to Elvis for Everyone. So it was a pretty close run thing, but on balance, I would say that yeah, the earlier album, Something for Everybody, just about pips Elvis for Everyone. But I think this album puts up a good fight, considering that all of the songs were old. I remember reading in a book when I was a young Elvis fan, a one-sentence review of this album, and it was just dismissed as a bag of leftovers. The suggestion being that, you know, it's rubbish, it was worthless. And the word leftovers is a little bit harsh, I think, although the fact is that all of the songs on it really were leftovers, because every single one of them was at least 2 years old, and some of the songs go back to the 1950s. But having said that, what a great collection of leftovers. Not a bag at all, actually, a very decent collection of leftovers that many artists from that particular period, the mid-60s, they could only dream of having such a decent collection of leftovers. But what about you? What are your thoughts on Elvis for Everyone? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks a lot. Cheers.